Good morning or afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is part of our 30-minute series. Today's topic is going to be the tools and reports and other functions within BNI Connect that is accessible to just about any member in BNI Connect. Things that will help you to communicate with your chapter easier, to invite some visitors, to check on your stats, to follow up with goals that your chapter might have. I'm going to show you where all those things are in BNI Connect and go through some of them and what some of them mean. Today's webinar is a live webinar, so if you have questions either as we're going along or at the end, please do feel free to bring up those questions as we're going through. There is a questions panel within the software. So just utilize that feature and be happy to monitor those questions and answer them as we're going along. I'll also leave time at the end. As I said, this is scheduled for about 30 minutes of content, but at the end I am willing to stay on this call as long as people still have valid questions, whether it's about stuff that we go over today or about any questions you have in BNI Connect. This webinar is being recorded. It will be made available on our YouTube channel. So our YouTube channel, if you aren't sure what that is youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Again, that's youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. You can go there and take a look at all of the uploaded webinars from the past 3 or 4 months or so. You can also find those by clicking on the question mark in BNI Connect. That will bring you to our support site, which is support.bniconnect.com. You can go directly there as well. And if you scroll down to the bottom, we have a whole section for trainings, walkthroughs. A lot of the features that we're going to talk about today, they're all documented with picture by picture, step-by-step instructions on how to do everything. And you can find those all down here in the training section, as well as links for our recorded webinars down there as well. So let's get started, shall we? Now, I always like to start these off by saying the first thing you really need to do is to make sure that you update your profile. And that is very easy to do in BNI Connect. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because we do have a webinar dedicated just to that. But the quickest way to do that is to click on the My Account button here in the upper right-hand corner and just make sure you go through the tabs that are here on the screen to fill out all of your pertinent information. I'm going to highlight a couple ones that you might want to make sure to do right away, and that is to make sure you describe your business. This is your elevator pitch, or let's say you're at a networking event, you met somebody that didn't know anything about you or your business. This is what you would tell them your business is about. Make sure you fill out your keywords so that other people can find you, both on the web, on the public side, as well as on the inside of BNI Connect. You can change your username and password on this page, the second tab, the user profile tab, and this is also where you upload your picture and your company logo. Make sure your contact information is all correct, as well as your social media links. And then the second to last tab is the bio. So when you have some time, make sure you go through all of this, fill out your bio, your commercials, your gains profile, your tops profile. Keep in mind that the tops profile is the one that also shows on the public website. So people that may just find you by Googling you, they would see this information. So let's jump into the tools and chapter functions. Now, a lot of these can be accessed through the various menus on top. So most people will have the network, operations, and reports tab. And which buttons you have and which links you have will be dependent on what access permissions you have in your region. So as I'm going through things today, if I click on something, you say, oh my goodness, I don't have that. That's not there. Please talk to your director consultant or your executive director and say, hey, you know, I saw this function. How come we don't have that in our area? They can talk to you about why it's not available or possibly even turn it on for you. So the functions can be accessed through these menus up at top or by clicking on this chapter submenu. Now this list here is customizable. Now you noticed I customized mine down to just 2 things while I was on another webinar the other day. But by clicking on the configure button, you'll see every single function that you have access to that you can add to your list over here. So let's say that I'm going to be doing emailing my chapter. I just click in there and it brings it over to my active list. Let's say that I'd like to look at the classifications not in chapter report and the upcoming speaker report. And I would like all of those things on my menu. I like to do the gains exchange, so I'm going to put the member details report here. And you can also reorder them so that they appear in whatever order you'd like. Now, when I click Save, it'll tell me that it has been saved. And then I can close and go back out, and you'll see that my menu is refreshed with the things that I put in it. So as we're going through these tools, if there's something that you find really cool, something you'd like to have access to more often, the easy way, you can go back into this shortcut menu to do that. I'm going to go through the traditional menus for now. Now, the first thing I want to show you is under the Operations menu. Now, the way to think of this is operations are things that you do, and reports is getting information back out of the system for things like stats, things that you want to look at. So let's look at a couple of things we can do at a member and a chapter level. We can go into Operations Chapter. And in this menu, depending again on your role access, you may or may not have some of these options, but this is where your visitor host, for example, would go in to add visitors into the system. But I'm going to show you a couple of things that are available to all members, and that is down at the bottom here, Create Email. Now, I've been a chapter member here in Rhode Island for about 11 years now, and over that 11 years, it has always been a challenge to keep in touch with my chapter members. People are leaving, people are joining. Usually the technique is, well, we go through and we find the last group message that was sent, and we hit reply all and hope that everybody is on the list that needs to be. Well, you don't necessarily need to do that anymore. You can use the Email My Chapter function. So again, this is under Operations Chapter, Create Email, Email My Chapter. And what this does is this will give you a current list of all of the people in your chapter, separated by semicolons, which is acceptable to just about every email program out there. So from here, what you can do is you can be confident that we just are going to highlight them. I'm going to right-click and choose Copy, or hit Control-A and Control-C on my keyboard. And I can now take this list and put it into my own email program, whether that is Microsoft Outlook or Gmail or whatever software you might use, and I can get an email blast out to my whole chapter. Again, being confident that anybody that might have joined in the last couple of weeks is there, and that member that left a month ago is no longer on the list, that doesn't need to be, and get that out with confidence. So again, that's under Operations Chapter, Create Email, Email My Chapter, and it will give you a complete list. Now, under this as well is a couple of other options, and the second option on here is Email Visitor Invitation. Now, this is a great tool for inviting visitors to your chapter, and the way it works is there's a template on the back end that has some information about BNI. It also will automatically put in your chapter location, the day that you meet, the time that you meet, a nice graphic about BNI, and then whatever custom message you decide to put in. So let me show you how that works as well. I'm going to click on Email Visitor Invitation. And all you need to do is fill out a couple of pieces of information in here. So we just need to put in the person's name. So I'm going to send an invitation to myself just so you can see what it looks like. And you're welcome to do this as well. If you'd like to see what the invitation looks like and see how quickly it comes, go ahead and put yourself in as to send yourself an invitation. So I'm going to put myself in. I'm going to put my company name in. I'm going to put my email address in. And you can put a short personal message in there. So let's say that I met somebody at a chamber event and I now want to invite them at my chapter. I could write, great seeing you at the chamber event. Look forward to seeing you at my meeting this week. Now when I hit send, it's going to send the email out immediately. Now this is just an email that goes out. There isn't any sent items. It doesn't get stored anywhere. No, you don't get carbon copied on it. But if you'd like to see what that looks like, again, send one to yourself, and let me show you what that looks like. So this is the email that the person that you're inviting would receive. And you'll see it has a BNI graphic in there, and that actually is based on the postcard campaigns that we have in BNI. It says, dear the person. It inserts the person's name. It inserts your personal message, so great seeing you at the chamber event. And then it puts in a template that we've put together. So it is, you're cordially invited to the meeting. It tells them the name of the chapter, where they meet, the directions to get there, or the address to get there, the day that you meet, and the time that you meet. A little bit of information about BNI, and then a call to action. It asks them to please RSVP with you so that you can know if they're coming or not. So that's a great, quick way to invite visitors to your chapter. All right, so going back to the operations functions, there is one other email option in there, and this is similar to the Email My Chapter, and it's the Email Chapter Visitors function. Now, the Email Chapter Visitors, what this does is, let's say that you just had a Visitors Day, or let's say that you're having a Visitors Day and you'd like to invite some people to your chapter. This will allow you to go through and to choose a period of time that you'd like to search for visitors. You can even, let's say that you're doing a stack day in your chapter, meaning you're only inviting 1 or 2 professions. You can search for just people in those professions as well. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to, let's say, date this back a little while so we get some more results. And then I can click Next. And again, this will pull up all of the visitors for our chapter. I can then copy and paste this into an email that I design in my own email program. Do we have any questions on any of the email functions so far? Excellent. So I'm going to show you one more function in here under the Operations menu, and that is for the Goals program. Now, the leadership teams in your chapters have access to enter goals for your chapter. How many referrals do you want to pass in a month as a chapter? How many one-to-ones does your chapter want to have in a month? Now, if your chapter is recording those goals, as a member, you can go in and look at the progress of those goals. And the way to do that is, again, under the Operations chapter menu, Manage Goals, and we can view chapter goals. It will show you 6 months worth of goals based on the date that you put in here. So let's say I'd like to look at my goals for my chapter from October onward. I click View, and we can see the totals of the actuals, even though our chapter hasn't entered any of the goals yet into the system. All right, let's take a look at some of the reports in the system. Now, the reports are available by clicking on Reports and then Chapter. And you can see there is a whole list of reports here. So some of the reports that you might be interested in as a general member might be, one of my personal favorite reports is the Personal POMS report. Now, the Personal POMS report is about halfway down the list, and what this report does is it goes through all of the POMS report for a certain period of time, and you get to choose the amount of time that is, and it will pull out a single name and give you a week-by-week status report of what it is with a grand total at the end. So this is a great tool if you would like to look at your own stats or anybody else from the chapter. I'm going to pull up my own stats, and I'm going to choose myself from the list. Now, I'd like to go back a couple of years. I'm going to actually go back to even before I was a member, just to make sure I have all my stats in there, and then through this month. Now, when I click Go, it'll pull up a Personal POMS report. So you can see that my chapter, even though I've been a member since 2002, you can see my chapter only actually started keeping electronic POMs somewhere around 2004. So I can go through this list and scroll through and look week by week by week at my stats in BNI. So the GI, there's a legend up here for you. So given inside, given outside, received inside, received outside, visitors, absence, or present, or late, or substitute, one-to-ones, thank you for closed business, and CEUs. And if I scroll all the way through this, I can see my grand totals at the bottom. You can also export this report. As with just about any report in BNI Connect, you have a couple of options for what to do with it. Let's say I'd like to do some calculations on this, or I want to keep it in an external database, or I just want to play with the numbers, or maybe I want to make a graph out of it. The way to do that would be to export this report. And most reports now have two options, one of which is called export without headers, and then a traditional export. Let's take a look at those two real quick. So if I export this without headers, this is going to an Excel report. And let me go ahead and switch my screen here. That will just take all of that data and put it into Excel for me. Now what's great about this is I can start manipulating the data. I can start breaking it apart or sorting it or changing things around, make a graph out of it, as I said. It also allows you to, if you're dissatisfied with the traditional printing in the report, you can customize the view of this to make it exactly the way you want it to. Let's take a look at the other report, which is the report with headers. And I'm going to go ahead and export that and open it up. And again, let me switch screens here. And what you can see here is that it has all of it's the same exact report, but it has the information about when you ran the report, what region, what chapter, the dates that you were querying as well. So for historical purposes, this is great. If you're just saving the file on your system, you'll be able to go back and look at the parameters of the report. What's bad about doing it this way is that sometimes there's some merged cells, which makes sorting and other formatting a little bit difficult. Okay, switching back over to my other screen here. And finally, we have the option of print. So this will just send it to your local printer. Again, your formatting options are limited depending on your computer and what kind of printer you have, and also which web browser you're using. All right, a new report that's now available, just as of this last week, is also your chapter traffic lights report, which is going to be listed here, the chapter traffic lights. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the traffic lights are, please go ahead and talk with your director consultant or your executive director. But what this is really, it's an activity report for your chapter based on a number of statistics, and I'll show you that in just one second. So let's say I'd like to run the report for this month. It will show us our traffic lights based on the last 6 months. So what it does, it's an average over the last of a rolling 6-month period based on chapter size, member growth, retention, referrals per member, visitors, the conversion rate of visitors, absenteeism, and then it gives you a traffic light score. So 70 and above is green, 50 to 65 is yellow, below 50 is red, and below 30 is in the gray. So again, if you'd like more information on traffic lights, please talk with your director consultant or your executive director. We do have one question. Rob Nelson asks, what is the best web browser to use? I'm not really sure which the best one is. That's highly open to opinion. My personal preference, as you can see, is I'm using Google Chrome. I can tell you that BNI Connect is tested and designed for use in full browsers, so it's not fully mobile ready yet. In It's tested in Firefox, Internet Explorer 8 and 9, Safari. So those are the three that it's quote-unquote certified in. But again, most browsers will work. Laura asks, is there a traffic light report for individual members? And currently, that is still something that we're hoping for someday as an enhancement. So right now, there is not that personal traffic lights report in BNI Connect. All right. Any other questions on that right now? All right, so let's take a look at a couple of the other reports in here. One of my other favorites is the meeting notes report. So if you click on the meeting notes report, this is a very simple report, but it's a highly effective one. And what this was designed for is one of the best ways to increase the referrals that you can give in your chapter is to pay attention while people are giving their 60 seconds. And the best way to do that is to actually write down what they were asking for or what they were talking about on a week-by-week basis. You know, especially as your chapter grows, if it's 20, 25, 30, 35, our chapter now has 50 members in it. I'll tell you, my memory is just not good enough to remember everything that everybody said on a weekly basis. And that's what this report is really for, is so that you can print out a sheet of paper that has everybody's name on it, their company name, and a space for you to write notes. This is a perfect candidate for exporting without headers, where you can export this report. And again, let me switch over to Excel real quick. With a tiny bit of editing, let's just open these columns up a little bit and maybe throwing a border around them. You know, we can grab a nice report, maybe open these columns up a tiny bit so that we have something that we can keep notes in during a meeting. Now, I know a lot of chapters do this already, and this may be a good way to make sure that the list is automatically updated with all of your chapter members, as opposed to having to manually keep that process. So it's a good starting point, if nothing else. All right, hopefully everybody's familiar with a POMS report, but if you're not, the summary POMS report, that's really the bread and butter of BNI. It'll give you the statistics for your chapter over a particular period of time. Now, traditionally in BNI, we always had to wait until our vice president decided to print out 10, 20, 30 copies and pass them around at a chapter meeting in order to get this information. You can now look this information up anytime you'd like to just by logging into BNI Connect. And the way to do that is, again, under Reports Chapter, and let's click on the Summary POMS report. Now, by default, it's going to bring up the last 6 months of completed data, but you can change this to however long you'd like. If you'd like to look at the stats for the last year, the last 2 years, the last 5 years, whatever you'd like. Click Go. And again, it'll show you all of the stats that we track in BNI, whether people were present, absent, late, medical substitute, referrals given inside or Tier 1 referrals, outside referrals or Tier 2 and above referrals, referrals received inside and outside or Tier 1 and Tier 2 and above referrals, the number of visitors that person has brought, number of one-to-ones they've had, the thank you for closed business, and the CEUs. So by pulling the report up, now one thing you may notice is that as you're looking at the list, you may say, oh my goodness, that person's not chapter anymore. How come they're showing up in the list? Well, given the time frame that you chose for this summary POMS report, let's say that you choose it for a 5-year period, it will show anybody that was an active member of the chapter that we have stats for during the period of that report. And again, if you export this one to Excel, you can do all sorts of fun things with it, such as, sort it by who has, the most presence, or who has the most referrals, or who's brought the most visitors. Now, the chapter roster report is a nice, quick and easy report, especially if you're wondering who's on your leadership team. And this is a great way if you have an issue that you need to talk to the membership committee about, or you need to talk to your vice president. Maybe you're not sure who's on your membership committee, or you're not sure who the educational coordinator is that you need to get a great idea for an educational moment for next week's meeting. This is a report where you can find out. Also, if you're unsure who your director consultant is, so I've said a number of times on the call, if you're not sure about something, call your director consultant. If you're not sure what their contact information is, here's a way that you can get it. If you open up this report, the chapter roster report, it will let you know who your director consultant is and their phone number. It'll also give everybody's name, their classification, and their company name and phone number. So a quick way to get in touch with somebody from your chapter if you're looking for their phone number. It also gives you a quick 90-day summary of the POMS report on the roster report. All right, now the final report that we're going to look at today is the member details report. Now, the member details report are extremely helpful reports for increasing your VCP in BNI Connect, but they do rely on you filling out your profile, which we talked about right in the beginning of the call. Now, if you think back to your member success program, one of the things that we talk about in the member success is making sure that you do a gains exchange before you have a one-to-one with somebody. It really helps with opening up avenues of conversation and getting a little bit deeper in conversation and getting deeper into the relationships through that conversation. Now, we can do that through BNI Connect. Before, I'd have to struggle through the documents on my computer, or was it updated, or have to fill out a new one right away. If you store this in BNI Connect, you can easily update it and keep it fresh. Now, the way to get to that is by clicking on Member Details and View Member Gains. So let's say that somebody was going to be doing a one-to-one with me. Hopefully what they would do is go to the Member Details report, pull up the gains, and just pick my name from the list. When they click Go, it will bring up my gains profile. And they can also flip over to look at my bio. They can look at my tops profile. And they can even look at a couple of my 60-second commercials that I've stored in the system. Which brings me to one other point. The 60-second commercials, you notice that there's a place on your profile to keep a couple of those. Now, there's a few reasons for that. The first of which is that's also something that shows on your inside profile in BNI Connect. Now, why is that a good thing? Because BNI members from around the world are looking at your profile. Most of them will probably never be at your chapter to hear one of your 60-second commercials. So in order to get some of that information and build your visibility and credibility, having a couple of 60-second commercials within your profile and available to other members to view is a good thing. The other reason for it may not be so obvious, but I'm sure this has never happened to you, but you realize night before your meeting, it's 8 o'clock at night, you say, oh my God, I can't make my meeting tomorrow. So you manage to call up a substitute real quick, and they're going to sub for you, no problem. But you realize you haven't gotten them a 60-second presentation. Well, you could always, if you have a couple in BNI Connect, you could always ask one of your fellow chapter members, hey, I have a sub coming tomorrow, wasn't able to get him a 60-second, I was nowhere near a computer, can you do me a favor? Go into my bio, grab one of my 60 seconds for them so that they have something to read at the meeting tomorrow. So just a couple of uses for this. All right, so those are some of the tools and the functions that we have time to go over in 30 minutes. I'd like to thank everybody for their time today. For those of you that have to leave right at the 30-minute mark, remind you that this is being recorded. It will be put up onto our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BNI Connect Global, probably within the next 24 to 48 hours. You can also find us on facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. We'd love to connect with you there as well. We do webinar announcements and upgrade announcements and tips and tricks. So please come and find us on Facebook. And on the support site, we have our list of upcoming webinars there. Our very next webinar is going to be on chapter goals, which is going to be next week. at 10 a.m. Pacific. So if you're on a leadership team, you'd like to learn how to input chapter goals in BNI Connect, we would love to see you on February 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. So a good referral for me is if you enjoyed the content today, enjoyed the webinar, please go back to your chapters and let them know about these webinars. We'd love to get the knowledge out of our heads and into yours. So I'd like to open it up for questions. Do we have any questions today about any of this functionality or anything else in the system? Joe says, very informative, thank you. Well, thank you, Joe. I'm glad you were here, and hopefully you found it helpful. So Rob asks about getting a login. So Rob, are you asking about how you get a login to BNI Connect to start with? If you don't have a login to BNI Connect, there's a couple of things you can do. The first thing you can do is to talk to your director consultant and or your regional office executive director, and they can send you an invitation to create a username and password in BNI Connect. The alternative is you can contact us here at support. If you go to support.bniconnect.com, what you'll see there is, let me log out of the support site. What you'll see is a link up at the top that says submit a request, and we can assist you with that as well. And we'll either get you in touch with your regional office, or we can assist with getting you a username and password. One thing to note is you do need to be an active member in BNI in order to have a login to BNI Connect. So if your application hasn't been processed yet at your chapter, or there's another issue with the membership, you will need to get through that process first. All right. Do we have any other questions? All right, so I've answered everybody's questions. Again, please join us for future webinars. Please let your fellow chapter members and regions know about these webinars. I look forward to seeing you in the future. Find us on facebook.com/BNI Connect Global. Look for the upload in a day or so on youtube.com/BNI Connect Global. Feel free to find me and send me a connection request. My name is Jeremy Walsh. I look forward to seeing you soon, and happy connecting, everyone. Have a great day.